Hi everyone, my name is Richard Santoro and I welcome you to Third and Zen, the YouTube channel where every week I'm sharing a spiritual message to nourish ourselves, heart, mind, body, and soul. First, thanks for stopping by the channel. Thanks for checking out today's video. I do hope that this video finds you doing well, and I hope that you're taking the time, the love, the energy, the effort that's needed to care for yourself, heart, mind, body, and soul. I hope you're enjoying your summer, hope you're staying cool, and hope you're doing well. Again, thanks for being here. If you feel like liking the video, subscribing to the channel, sharing this with people that you think might enjoy or benefit from it, I'd appreciate it. But again, either way, thanks for being here. Thanks for being you. With that being said, let's all take a nice deep breath. Take a moment, just be still. Give ourselves permission to just be here in this moment as best we can. Take a breath or two. And let's get started with today's message, shall we? So those of you that have watched videos on this channel, or those of you that know me, know that art is a really big part of my life, just in so many ways. And I happen to be reading a book I got recently about being an artist, taking like a more of an existential approach than a hands-on, do this, do that approach. Really cool, really caught my attention. And a couple of things jumped out at me that helped spark today's message. So I just want to share that. The author was talking about how, first, the author was talking about how when you paint trees, and it was a really cool reminder. Let me, can't really see it from here with the way the focus is. But the author was saying when you paint trees, you gotta remember the open spaces. You know that, let me tap that right there. There we go, that changes the focus better. Like, the author talked about how the trees, they have open spaces. It's not, this is obviously not a great example. It's not always just the full branches and it's full green. So you have to remember the open spaces in a tree, because that's the spaces where we see the sky, and it looks good in a painting, and that's what trees are actually like. And the artist, that's number one. Number two, the author, not the artist, the author was talking about the mindset and the way artists function in the world, in that artists are always looking around and noticing things, that artists see the world through the lens and through the mind of an artist, that they see things in the world. They're always looking like, oh, that, just that's how the brain works. It just really is. Seeing things that catch an artist's eye, that art really appears everywhere, which is actually really true. And it's not confined to just artists, but this is where we are. So anyway, so the tip from the author is notice, look around, notice what you see, be mindful of it. And my mindset was sort of already like that, but this helped give it more focus. And honestly, I started to notice more. I started to look around at the trees, and now, like, I literally was driving here this morning, dropped my godson off at karate this morning, and as I was driving through the neighborhood, and now I just always all I do is look at the trees, which I always like to do anyway, but now I notice them more, and I notice the open spaces more. And it reminds me of Mr. Rogers, how he would always say that the most important area on a page of a book that you're reading is the spaces in between. That's the moment where you get to think and contemplate what you just read. Okay, so that introduction felt a little clunky. I apologize from the heart, but here we are. And with those things, with the tips from the author about noticing things, looking around and genuinely and sincerely and authentically noticing, and with the other tip about the open spaces that are there in the trees between the branches, it made me think. And that's where we're going to really jump into today's message. I'm going to pose two questions. And a lot of this message is going to be a little bit of asking rhetorical questions, but there'll be more than that. But the two questions that it really made me think for today's message is, number one, do we truly notice the world around us? If so, what do we notice? And if we're not genuinely noticing the world around us, what are we noticing? What are we seeing? So do we truly and genuinely notice the world around us, number one? And number two, Are we open to genuinely and sincerely and honestly noticing the world around us? So do we notice? Are we mindful? And do we notice the world around us? And are we open to the world around us and noticing what's really there? Let me give some examples of what I mean by that. When we see other people, do we notice other people? Do we genuinely and truly see them? Nothing more valuable than being seen, and nothing more painful than not being seen. So when it comes to other people, do we notice others? What are we noticing when we see other people? Are we genuinely and sincerely looking with eyes of love and empathy and care and understanding and kindness? Christ-like eyes, let's say? Do we notice the pain and the suffering of others, the challenges they face, the journey they may have gone through? Do we notice the things that maybe we don't know about them and understand that? Do we notice the God in others? Or do we only see the God in other people that we want to see it in, that maybe fit a mold that we think is, as some people would say, godly? Do we notice? Do we genuinely see and notice others? Do we notice the outcast, the needy, the unloved, those that are challenging, those that are hard to love, those that are different? Do we genuinely notice others? Do we see them openly and honestly? Are we open to seeing them as they are? Do we notice the good in the world? There's a lot of bad. It's really, really, really tough. Really tough. And I could say right now, I know I'm going to be dropping this video at the end of the week, but I could say especially with the last week we've had. But I could probably say that, I could probably put this video out at any point during our year, during the course of our journey together, and we probably will have had a week where it's like, wow, we've had a week. But do we also notice the good? Do we notice the world in its whole entire broad view? The good, the triumphs, the love that exists, the relationships, the kindness, the innovations, the creative compassion, the cool things, the beauty, the wonder, the amazing stuff in this world. Do we notice that? Are we open to seeing that and not just seeing the ugly, which does exist too? We have to hold space for that, I know. But do we notice all of it? And do we notice the bad? Do we honestly and objectively and sincerely notice the stuff that's not good? Not just the stuff that maybe is on our side of the political aisle or our own worldview, but do we honestly and sincerely notice the bad, the tough, the challenging? Do we notice the corrupt? Do we notice the power hungry, the selfish? Do we notice the damage that is done by? Do we notice the damage? I'll leave it there. Do we notice those that are in this world that are off course, the leaders, the institutions, the things that need to stop, that need to change, that need to do better, that need to maybe even make amends? And let's shift the focus a little bit on ourselves. Let's talk a little bit about our vision, because I did say, do we notice in the world around us? And if so, what do we notice? And that prompts us to maybe check our own vision and how we're seeing. Do we, as I've mentioned, do we see the world as it is, honestly? Or do we, as has been attributed to Anais Nin, the Talmud, others, as they would say, do we see the world as it is? Or do we see things as we are? Do we see things as they are? Or do we see things as we are? Are we seeing things through the lens of our own biases, our own distorted viewings, our own distorted thinking? Are we aware of that within ourselves? Are we aware of our blind spots? Are we aware of perhaps a bubble we might be in, where we're good here and they're not good over there, but I can't really notice that? Do we see that? Are we aware of our own blind spots, our own biases, our own cognitive distortions and dissonance? Again, do we truly notice the world around us? And who and what do we notice? How do we notice them? Are we open to genuinely noticing the world around us? Are we open to seeing the world around us? Are we open to seeing the world around us, and then let's take another step forward? Are we open to change? Are we open to seeing the world and viewing it through the lens of, hey, change, growth, progress, innovation, radicalness, radical love, radical empathy, radical kindness, radical understanding and acceptance, new ideas, new ways? Are we open to that when we see the world around us? Pause here for a moment. Asking a lot of heavy, direct, strong questions, rhetorical questions. Let's pivot to Jesus. It's always a nice sentence to say and a nice thing to do. Jesus noticed the world around him. Jesus noticed people around him. He genuinely saw people. He genuinely saw, honestly, the world around him. He noticed that things were wrong. He noticed that things were wrong in the world and that things needed to change. Again, Jesus noticed people around him, those that others didn't notice, those that others did not want to see. And Jesus was open to them. He was open to others. Jesus noticed the outcast woman at the well, who had to go to the well at the hottest part of the day because she was shunned by her community. He noticed her. He saw her. Jesus noticed the outcast woman who happened to, in a crowd, touch the hem of his garment. She was seeking healing for a bleeding condition that she had. And this woman who was separated from society, another woman who was shunned and separate from society due to her condition. Jesus noticed her. Jesus noticed the outcast, the tax collector, Matthew. I have that Caravaggio painting on my wall at home that appears in so many videos. But Jesus noticed him. He saw him as a human being, and he noticed him, even though he was an outcast, someone whom everybody hated. Did you notice? I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean the pun, the play on words here, but let's do it anyway. Let's go with it. Did you notice the trend I placed there in those three quick examples? The outcast, the shunned, the separated, those that others didn't want to notice in their wholeness, in their fullness, in their humanity. Those that others choose to separate and say, we don't want to see you. We're not open to you in a certain way. Jesus was. He noticed them. He saw them truly. He saw them with eyes of love and understanding and kindness and empathy and acceptance. That was Jesus. Is that us? Is that Christians in this world today? Okay. Jesus noticed those that the world didn't want to see, or those that were seen by others through lenses of judgment, harsh judgment at times, and not of love, not of Christ-like eyes. Jesus noticed them, and he saw them. To be seen, to be truly seen, to be seen for who you are, to be seen without eyes of judgment, it's such a beautiful and valuable thing. And when you're not seen, or when you're seen with eyes of judgment, it is such a painful and at times traumatic thing. But Jesus, he was open to others. He was open to seeing them. He spoke to them. He was kind to them. He was open to being with them, truly. And in a lot of the scripture passages, we get limited exchanges, but I'm sure with Jesus there was an exchange, give and take. Tell me about you. Let's talk. Let's talk in value. I want to hear you. I want to see you. Jesus noticed the world around him. Is that us? Do we do that? Jesus spoke to them. He was kind to them. He was open to being with them, truly, to accepting them, to embracing them, to actively loving them. That was Jesus. Is that us? And Jesus, again, noticed the world around him, and he noticed the issues around him, the issues and how it affected the people. Jesus was open to seeing that and to doing something about that and to being open and seeing all people. Jesus was open to newness, to new paths of living, of being, of coexisting, of fellowship. Jesus was open to radical love, radical healing, radical change, to radical kindness, radical empathy, radical acceptance. Jesus was open to better. What's the better? Improving. He noticed that we could do better. and he was always open to better ways. Again, do we notice things as we are or as they actually are? What do we notice? Do we notice the world around us, others, the journey, the pain, the challenges, the pain of others? Do we notice Jesus in the world? And do we notice Jesus in others? Not just those that we feel are godly or are good at Christianity. Good Christians, my kind of Christian. Do we fully see with eyes of love and are open to seeing and noticing and being open to others? Okay, deep breath. I know I just laid a lot of heavy rhetorical questions, pointed questions at us. So let me close us out here with a little less of that. If you've noticed the title of this video, and I'll apologize because the title of the video and what I've just presented in the last 15 minutes is a little more challenging, but let's hopefully end on what the title of the video is, and that's Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin and Hobbes. This is my Calvin and Hobbes book that I've actually had since it came out. Sorry, bear with me here. This was 1987. I was in high school when Calvin and Hobbes first came out, and I've had that book since then, since it came out. I love Calvin and Hobbes like so many of us do. I loved Calvin and Hobbes right from the beginning. I remember when it premiered. I remember when I was in high school. I still remember like it was yesterday, being in study hall, and in study hall I'd go to the library, and by sitting there reading the Newsday, New York, Long Island newspaper, and I'd be reading the comic strips back when we would do that, and I remember literally laughing out loud in the library during the quiet time, study hall, library, and getting in trouble several times, just because laughing, because I loved it so much. Calvin and Hobbes is such a iconic pop culture thing, and for good reason. I love Calvin and Hobbes. What do I love about Calvin and Hobbes? And this won't just be me talking about how much I love Calvin and Hobbes. There's a message in there for us to end on. I loved Calvin himself, the character Calvin and Hobbes. I loved how much fun he was. He was funny, and he was snarky, and witty, and smart, and intelligent, and intelligently witty and snarky. And he was adventurous. And I mean, again, he was super intelligent with his wit, his snark, and with the commentary he gave. I mean, Calvin, the author Bill Watterson, yes. I had to look, make sure there wasn't a T, Waterston. Bill Watterson named him after the 16th century theologian, John Calvin, the Protestant theologian, Presbyterian, all that. I love that Calvin is bold and doesn't care what people think. So he's strong and he's bold, but he's also he's also scared. And when he's scared, he leans into his friend Hobbes. And that's the other one, Calvin and Hobbes, the stuffed tiger. I love Hobbes. I love how Hobbes is kind and understanding and just mellow and chill and really wise. Another one, Bill Watterson named him after the 17th century philosopher Thomas Hobbes. So, Bill Watterson infused a lot of that in there, and we'll talk about that in a moment. I love how Hobbes just goes with the flow and is cheeky and witty, and he loves his friend deeply and perfectly and is often very amused by the troublesome things that Calvin does. And I love their relationship. I love it in and of itself, but I love how only Calvin can see the realness of Hobbes. Only Calvin notices the realness of Hobbes, the animation where Hobbes is alive and real and tangible and an individual. Only Calvin sees that and notices that. Therein lies part of the message. And I love that. And I love that we don't know, is Hobbes real? We don't know. We don't know in the real world, if in that Calvin and Hobbes world, if Hobbes is real and only Calvin can see him, or this is all part of Calvin's imagination. I love the ambiguity of that, and I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful depiction of that relationship. I love Calvin's relationship with the world around him, with the bullies and teachers and his parents and little Susie Durkins. And I love that Calvin lives in his imagination. He's got these iconic characters within his world that he creates, the Spaceman Spiff and Stupendous Man, and I love that so much revolves around his imagination with dinosaurs and snowmen that he makes and creates this art with. And I love, and here it is, I'm going to start leaning more into the message, talking about us noticing and seeing and being open to the world around us, being open to seeing the world around us. I love how Calvin saw the world around him. I love the way he noticed the world around him. And I love that, as a child ought to, Calvin is a child, as smart and snarky as he is, he's still a kid. But I love that as he sees the world around him, he makes it fun. He makes it his own. He leans into his imagination as his way of navigating and seeing the world around him. I love that. How do we see the world around us? How do we navigate honestly and genuinely and sincerely seeing the world around us? And I love the author, Bill Watterson, for so many reasons, but I'll keep it limited because I know I'm talking quite a bit here. I love how Bill Watterson noticed the world around him and thus used his art to speak to it all and to share his thoughts of the world that exists, honestly, to share his view with us. The author infused in a very fun and creative and impactful and iconic comic strip, he infused his commentary on the world that he saw, from his criticisms of academia and criticisms of the art world and art criticism to how we as humanity treat the world around us. His environmental concerns, first and foremost, right at the forefront. He saw that, and that's what he shared with us. And his thoughts on psychology and philosophy, seeing the world around us through the prism of psychology and philosophy. And also humor, obviously, and fun, but again, at times, that commentary of the world of environmentalism and public education and philosophical quandaries. And all of this view of the world and noticing the world around us was presented to us through the broad and open point of view and eyes and imagination of a little boy and his tiger. That's how Bill Watterson saw the world and was open to it and presented it to us. So to close us out here again, I'll ask, do we truly notice the world around us? What do we notice around us? And are we open to genuinely and honestly seeing the world around us? So my friends, I want to encourage all of us to go into the world. And as the author of that art book I read that was so impactful on me, go into the world, as he said, go into the world. See the world. Notice things. Genuinely see and notice and look. See the trees and their open spaces. And look at the world around us and see with the eyes and the openness and the love of Jesus. See with eyes of Jesus with love and care and compassion and understanding, and truly notice and see. And I want to encourage us to be open to what we see, open to radical love and the radical care of Jesus. And notice and be open with the artistic flair of Bill Watterson and with the imagination and massive and transcendent view of Calvin and Hobbes. Go into the world and see and notice and be open. The world awaits for all of us to see. Thanks be to God. Amen. Okay, my friends, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for checking out today's video and today's message. I hope in some way, shape, or form you found the video and today's words helpful. I wish you nothing but peace and love and fellowship with God as you journey forward. And I love you all. Thanks for being here. Have a great day. Have a great week. Ciao, ciao.